Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane, as we look at, the possible future of companies. Company 3 broaches subjects within that, and in this case, the subject is, well, snipers in Company 3. I mean, what role are they going to fill there? Because, personally, I'd say the roles of the snipers in Company 1 and Company 2 have been largely atrocious, In a game about tactics, flanking, maneuvers, screening, all that, you got this guy who just walks around out in the open, shoots people at a far distance, and is really difficult to counter. He just basically breaks most of the rules of the game, and he just doesn't make sense. He was even worse in Company 1, but in Company 2, he's not exactly, much more amazing. And you compare with the actual concept of a sniper in an actual war, there's just barely any overlap, except, this guy killed from range, the sniper, but an actual sniper would also kill from range, but, most snipers would not just run about and just immediately leg it, because in fact that would get them shot. So, I think they need to come up with something of a bit of an actual role for the sniper in Company 3 if they decide to have the sniper, not just go, hang on, do we need snipers? No. Well, why not at them? And of course, there's the people like them, like the cons. The problem is, again, it's sort of like, the whole Wunderwaffen thing, big tank destroyers. They're just, in essence, impractical because of how they have to work. And again, I'll end up being useless like the elephant and just, completely bust. And that's sort of, I think, the same issue with the sniper. It's just, in part, though, it's sort of the, whole idea about the sniper, the aesthetic, these super warriors who can just take out everyone from, like, a kilometer or two away. And, again, there's sort of this myth is about them, in particular that Finnish guy. And the problem is, of course, while they can do a lot of killing, the problem is, in a sort of more tactical engagement, it's going to be pretty difficult to balance that properly, because in many ways the snipers are just, to pick out specific targets, not take out half the German army or the Allied army or whatever army they took on, which in some cases is exactly what the snipers end up doing. If you get a pair of them, walking about, they can just begin obliterating entire armies easily, and obviously that's never going to work in an actual war with snipers, otherwise they just trained everyone to be snipers. Problem solved. But that's obviously not how it works. So in that regard, the issue is a bit, how do we sort of fit snipers in, between that idealized version, again, where they're apparently just these, gods, and, something that's, fun to play against, because that's really one of the snipers' main issues. They just an absolute pain in the ass to deal with. Like, they're difficult to counter, and they can just do, indiscriminate damage. Imagine a tank destroyer that could take out tanks in one shot, and at the same time had access to retreat button that made it really difficult to kill, and any counters to it were largely inefficient. That would not be particularly fun. That's exactly the sort of situation we're dealing with the sniper. They somehow, once they hit the retreat, largely bulletproof, you can send 2-2s after them, and they just won't die. So I think there needs to be the overhaul of the sniper. The snipers are sort of more, psychological weapons, again, taking up, specific targets. And the problem is, in that regard, we're sort of lacking in some ways to specific targets, except the support rooms. There's not really a large degrees of officers or squad leaders, anything where you can sort of be done to, slow things down with. And even that'd be still pretty annoying to have to constantly, replace your squad leaders and sort of, in a more game mechanical sense. So in that regard, we're sort of probably looking more like, psychological, again, sort of morale weapon, if they add a morale system or suppression, in which case, the sniper could be more, pinpoint, instant pinning down a unit, because, good lord, they just came under sniper fire. But again, with us, be not so efficient versus larger groups, but it's sort of quite useful versus, say, elite infantry squads. So this suddenly become a problem, like, pew! Those guys' heads are down for some time. So that could maybe, be one way of utilizing the snipers as these morale weapons. Yes, in part suppress opinions, but also just sap them morale, because no one really wants to poke their head about if there's a sniper around. And if they need to add something more to tanks, they need to have some threats there, because, if some tank commander pokes his head out and gets shot off, right, you got your issues there as well. So that could also force tank commanders to be more cautious, stick their heads inside the tank. And of course, that sends also lower morale. So I think that's sort of one of the, really good reasons they probably should add a morale system, because simply that would actually allow them to fit snipers in a more sensible, less Call of Duty 360 no-scope Doritos Mountain Dew sense, because that's kind of how snipers in Companies 1 and Companies 2 have very much been operating on the Call of Duty 360 no-scope principle. That is, again, just these somehow super elite warriors that can somehow deal with everything. They belong more in Red Alert than they belong in Company Heroes against, otherwise more about flanking, tactics, maneuver, and all that. And the snipers just currently undermine that entirely. So I mean, you know, at some point during the whole, you know, writing up whole Communist Free stage, which they might be at, or what happened down the road, they really need to have a very hard look at snipers and really ask, are they absolutely necessary? Are they absolutely crucial? Are we just trying to deliver some fantasy? Some people, you know, probably don't appreciate the rest of the game anyways, and if we absolutely have to include them, can we maybe not do it in such a way that it doesn't ruin the day for everybody else? Because that's kind of how snipers work out, you know, they just sort of automatically ruin the day because, again, they just largely break the rules, which, again, is pretty bad. You should not have units that just automatically break the rules, again, like a tank that can just, you know, retreat instantly compared to anybody else. That'd be just like, how's that supposed to be fair? Right, and yet here we are with the snipers, just clear, indicative rule breakers. So I definitely think there needs to be a sort of bigger thought they're having there once they get around to coming through besides mechanics and all that. That's just really, where do we actually see the sniper fitting in a manner that does not want to, you know, make people throttle other people very slowly while staring into their eyes and watching their life bleed out. Because that's a time certainly I wanted to do, more specifically, just shout at someone from rolling a lot. Very, very a lot. As I tried to somehow get them to, you know, understand the concept of how terrible snipers are for the game. But that's another story. So that's sort of my view on snipers in Company 3, because, again, personally I absolutely loathe them. I think they're sort of up there with mortar emplacements as just some of the worst concepts ever added to Company Heroes. Mortar emplacements, infantry sections that somehow have to be, you know, bulletproof, and snipers. Just those three are sort of out there. Just what on earth were they thinking? The sort of terms of just, you know, design. And thankfully, they will hopefully, by Company 3, also learn the lesson on mortar emplacements. I pray to all that is holy. I mean, I can just, you know, go on about that one as well. That's why mortar emplacement is absolutely a god-awful idea, and why I'm still shocked they managed to put that one back into Companies 2. So those were pretty much sort of one of the key issues people really hated the Brits. Because those really just core of the whole SimCity, just rushing a truck ahead, putting up mortar emplacement. There you go. But enough about that. Snipers, equally as obnoxiously dumb as the mortar emplacement in many ways. And again, a unit I would personally love noticing in Companies 3, but again, if they absolutely have to, they really need to figure out a better way of doing it. Again, that's what I'm suggesting. Again, in this regard, a morale system would be absolutely perfect, and then sort of make the sniper work in as this sort of terror weapon, instead of this, you know, again, Call of Duty 360 no-scope Mountain Dew guy. So those are my thoughts, my opinions on that subject matter. Feel free to agree or disagree with them. They'll, of course, sign off in the comments either way. And, you know, big thanks all for joining in and watching this and listening to my small thoughts / rants on snipers. If you'd like to agree, you know, subscribe, like, share, comment. And, of course, if you'd like what I do consider donating or pledging on Patreon to support the war effort. This is Imperial signing off, and see you all another time for another video. Cheers.